Good
evening.
Last of them to an opportunity to have a seat here. All right. Again, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Winnebago County Board meeting. Tonight is Thursday, January 26th, 2023. It is 6 o'clock p.m. Our invocation and pledge allegiance this evening is going to be by board member Valerie Hanser. Everyone stand, please.
Bow your heads, please. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for another opportunity to represent our constituents. I ask that you look over this committee, this body, so that we are making decisions that are full of a servant's heart. I ask that you also, Lord, be there for the families that have lost their loved ones to gun violence. And with that, Lord, I ask that you continue to watch over us so that we can make guideful and wonderful decisions. Amen.
Amen.
Mr. Webster? Mr. Arena? Mr. Booker?
Present.
Mr. Butita? Thank you all. Mr. Chairman, 17 board members present, 3 board members absent.
Very good, thank you. We do have a quorum this evening. First item of business this evening is going to be a presentation from our tax agent for the trustee program from the Regional Warren Planning Council. Mr. Dunn, could you please come forward? And Mr. Setter.
Well, good evening, everyone. Nice to see all of you again. Hope everyone's doing well. Eric's here, too, to answer any questions that I might not be able to cover. But we provided this handout. I don't know if it's on the screen or not, but happy to, stop at any time. And also, our role as agent to the county trustee is separate from our role as the Land Bank Authority for Northern Illinois. If you have questions or want to understand the differences between us running both programs, I'm happy to stop at any time and explain the differences. But tonight we were asked to give a update on our performance as your agent. And if you go to the first slide, it will show historical receipts collected for trustee interest and trustee sales going back to 1999. Those were the levels that of performance that dollars were collected on. We took over in fiscal year 20. The blue bar represents sales volume and sales receipts. That orange-yellow bar represents redemption interest. We were the first agent that you've had that's returned interest that our residents pay when they have late taxes back to you and other taxing districts. So we added that interest onto those bars because that's revenue for the program that after expenses gets redispersed. The second slide is 3 years of our financial results. I can quickly walk through the various rows, but you have row 1, which is just sales of properties, land and structures. We exceeded every year from fiscal year 20 on the farthest right, working inward to fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22. Every year we grew sales volume, and that's because we use an online sales system. Your former agent and even the current agents that serve other counties in Illinois do not offer that feature. So much so that other counties are now talking to us and having them be agent to their trustee program as well because of our online sales system. That online sales system has over 2,000 unique registered buyers that get email updates from us, or whenever we add a new property, they're dynamically aware of what our inventory is. That's a far cry from the former agent who at best might have one auction a year in a basement somewhere that had to be done in person. Next, row number 2, interest, as I mentioned. Previously, 100% of interest that we collect on late taxes would not stay within local government. It would not go to our schools or libraries or fire protection districts. The county would not see any of it. It would simply be sent to your former agent. That's customary across Illinois. That's how other counties do it as well. In the unique feature of our past agreement and this current agreement is that we consider that sales dollars, lump it in with sales dollars, and redistribute it back to the taxing districts. Number 3 is revenue before any sort of maintenance function. So basically the net of 1 and 2. Number 4 was the repayment. When the program started in fiscal year 20, we borrowed $75,000 of host fees to cover the startup cost. We paid that back within the first year. We were authorized to borrow $150,000, but we only borrowed $75,000, and it was paid back within 12 months. And then where we get to real, operational expenses is 6 and 7. Maintenance expenses, we were authorized up to $150,000 a year to pay for maintenance of trustee parcels. That includes mowing and garbage removal. Sometimes the chairman has asked us to secure the property, so on request and the chairman's approval, we've done that. However, at that $150,000 of annual budget that we're allowed to spend, you can see that we didn't come anywhere near that. And as we liquidate properties from the program, we mow less, so that number keeps going down. And then finally, program net. So after we take out maintenance and operational expenses, we made that repayment back to the host fee. You can see for all 3 fiscal years what our total expenses were. While they grew in fiscal year 21, that had to do with the backlog of properties that we received from your former agent. There was a delay in us getting them due to pending issues. And so when we got an influx of properties in that middle year, there was a lot of recording, deeding, and skip tracing cost. We gave the sheriff's department about $100,000 of that for the sheriff to serve property owners versus us using a private firm, which was what was occurring in the past. But then you can see in fiscal year 22, we were able to operate the program at a much lower cost. None of R1's costs come out of items 7 or 8. So, I'm sorry, items 6 and 7. So when you think of R1, R1 is not charging line item 6 and 7 with any labor cost or any technology costs that it cost us to operate the program. And then down at 12 and 13 is the split. Historically, in your past agreements, like I said, your former agent would collect 100% of interest. That's no longer the case. Interest and sales are top line revenue lines. And so we basically collect the same percentage that your former agent did on sales, and then we collect 33% of interest after expenses versus before expenses. And that gets put into a blight reduction fund at R1 that the R1 board administers, and the R1 board has spending authority on. And that fund is basically used for future endeavors for neighborhood revitalization and blight reduction, but it can only be used for efforts within Winnebago County. And then at the end, you can see the proceeds payout. That's payout to all the taxing districts of the area, including the county. If I move to the next slide, a couple before and afters to just give you a small glimpse of what success looks like. I might ask Eric to come up and talk about total properties put back into private hands. But the two that we're proud of that are recent, one is 12th Avenue in Rockford. We acquired it in late 2020. We were able to get $24,000 at auction for it. That's a big amount for a property like that. Again, taxing districts got at a minimum 67% of that value. But then the developer came in. They have to go to permit. They have to get a certificate of occupancy. They can't take shortcuts or do things in the dark of night. So the assessor now knows all the work that's been done there. And so even if they didn't sell it, you're capturing that improvement value on the parcel, but they did sell it, and they sold it for $160,000. So that's remarkable in that now you have a property that had not paid taxes for almost probably a decade, is now paying taxes at $160,000 value, and the properties around it, the neighboring properties, all see their property value go up, and maybe they want to go out and get a home equity line or refinance their home. They now have a higher appraised value, or homes in that neighborhood can now get a comp if they need to get appraised because there's a comp here. And so it does remove blight. It does allow neighbors to feel proud of the block they live on and remove boards on windows or vagrancy. and now have a property value boost. Same with 1522 North Winnebago Street. That was a property we sold for $12,000. It needed a lot of work. You can see there were boards on the windows. Very quickly, within 5 months, it was turned around and then sold the summer after, and it looked like that, and again, sold for $130,000. Belvedere, because we always talk about the land bank, Belvedere was a land bank project, and the land bank project, this was our first one. Very much like the trustee, but a little different in that the land bank gets involved before it gets to the trustee. The land bank gets involved 2 years if something's property tax delinquent and is functionally abandoned. Nobody wants to say they own it. This was a house in Belvedere that was across from a daycare, lots of calls for service, drugs. The alderwoman said it was her number one goal to deal with, her number one complaint. We had a ribbon cutting. Everybody was thrilled. People got to walk through the home. And again, it sold at the land bank for $41,000. And then the person who redeveloped it sold it for $190,000. Huge boost for a property that had not paid taxes for 13 years. So before we turn it over on questions, oh, and the last slide, pardon me. Some of you might have read in the paper that we entered into a partnership with District 205, the City of Rockford, and Habitat for Humanity. This was for a subdivision that had failed in 2008 that the City of Rockford had given a lot of incentives to. TIF was upside down. Over by Auburn and Springfield, right contiguous with Auburn High School. The developer walked away from the subdivision after the city put all the public infrastructure in. And we were able to work out with the developer a handoff of the property. We were able to clean up all the municipal liens that were on it, again, as a land bank. And there was roughly 30 lots that had never been developed. And so we entered into a partnership with Habitat to develop those lots, and within 2 years put 30 new homes in there, and to give first right of refusal to 205 employees, and to allow 205 employees to live there as a way for 205 to attract new teachers and retain those teachers, and potentially some of the teachers working at the 3 different schools that are right next door. So we're really proud of that project as well. Not many people want to build homes in this environment. Sometimes building materials are hard to obtain. And the fact that Habitat's committed in the next 2 years to build 30 new structures that are going to pay us property taxes and help make the city of Rockford whole on their infrastructure investment, I think is a huge thing, and it benefits 205 greatly. So you're going to see more projects like this on the land bank versus these just one-off housing projects. The land bank was built to come in and save these neighborhoods and bring private sector interests back in. So with that, we're very proud of our success. I want to thank you now for renewing our contract after the first 3 years. You're not going to see much out of the trustee program in 2024, or I'm sorry, in 2023, and I'm happy to answer why. But 2023 is going to be a very quiet year for the trustee program. But what that means is that 2024 is going to be a very busy, very active year for the trustee program. Eric, is there anything you'd want to add? Okay, we're happy to answer questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Are there any questions from the board? Yes, Ms. Goro.
Why is it going to be quiet in '23 and more active in '24?
So prior to us becoming your agent and this board voting on us being your agent back in October 2020? No, it'd been yes, October 19th, thank you. So prior to our IGA becoming active, you were still technically with your former agent, and a treasurer's auction occurred prior to us becoming the agent, and neither your old agent or us were notified to be there, and neither your old agent or us were there, and therefore the trustee's agent was not present to take properties that weren't going to sell at tax sale. And there's a 3-year lag on that. So when Eric went to the auction last October, we're there, we're processing properties, but we're not really getting access to those properties and in our inventory for 3 years, because you have 3 years to come in and pay your taxes late. So 2023 is going to be a result of you not having an agent at that auction, And so we think we can cost control the annual expenses because we have liquidated so many properties. There's not many properties to mow. The chairman led, and we really appreciated the chairman creating a program to offer vacant land to neighboring property owners. I think we had 100, roughly. Yeah, so we had 100 parcels disposed of recently to neighboring property owners for free. That was a huge win, and we don't have to maintain those lots now. And Chairman Shirley, thank you again for that. That was an excellent program, and we're going to keep pushing that program. So in 2023, we really don't have anything to sell. Right now, we only have one home in the trustee program, and that's about to go to auction. We won't get that new influx of inventory for another year. We'll cost control as much as we can mowing in this year. I think we'll do just fine. And we will have a high legal expense this year, Board Member Gorel, because we have to process deeds and serve people in anticipation of 24. So if we do have a high expense this year, it's not on mowing, it's on getting ready for basically 2 years worth of properties coming to us in 2024. I hope that gives you enough context for slow next 12 months.
Yes, because one of the questions I had was how many properties do you have right now, parcels altogether?
There's about
You can come up if you want.
There's about 500, give or take, in the inventory, and it's nearly all vacant lots.
We have one structure, one
Yeah.
residential structure.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Tim?
Oh, Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subdivision on Springfield, will they follow the same home pattern as the previous? Will they be better or a little lower than what was built before?
So, board member neighbors, that's ultimately up to the city of Rockford and the city of Rockford's design standard, which most would say is high. We know that the houses that Habitat have built over by Jefferson High School have been good quality. And so I can't give you a technical answer, and I can't speak for Mr. Cagnoni and the city of Rockford on what that is. Our agreement was simply to sell those lots at our cost to Habitat. The design standard for the new construction is not a function of us at all. That's between the city of Rockford and Habitat. My expectation is that knowing the homes that were there, they should not look out of ordinary at all.
Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Hansard.
Yes, thank you. Could you speak a little bit on the vacant lots? Any type of program that you may have that helps a person if they win that lot for development purposes if they wanted to choose to build on those lots?
Sure. Thank you, and I appreciated speaking to you over the phone about this. So the R1 board has authorized me to use for 2 projects in using the 33% that we receive for blight reduction. We are waiting for a better environment to really look at opportunities to invest most of it, but we've trialed 2 things, and one of them has not taken off the way we want to, but we still have hope, and that's what you're referring to. So the first measure that the R1 board authorized up to $55,000 on, and it requires the municipality or an unincorporated area to match it dollar for dollar, is that if somebody's willing to take a trustee parcel, a vacant lot, and build a single-family home that's owner-occupied, whether it's the builder, the developer, or the owner-occupant, we will give them $15,000, $7,500 from R1 towards construction cost. As a way to induce new construction, we believe that that gets paid back within 2 years of property taxes being paid, and it's a way to spur new construction in neighborhoods that have not seen construction for a while. And so the R1 board unanimously voted for that trial program. Eric's met with some home builders, and the response has been that $15,000 doesn't come anywhere near what they need to cover the cost of a new home. But it's a good try, and we'll revisit it. But so far, nobody's wanted to take us up on that. But that was our way of trying to get more vacant land out of the trustee program and into development. The second program that the R1 board gave me the okay on was we wrote a federal EPA grant, Brownfield Coalition grant, for the city of Loves Park. They have some blighted industrial areas, mostly around Windsor Road and around the river. And we were going to do brownfield remediation on a commercial level. And that was something that was asked for by Loves Park, and the R1 board obliged. So those are the kind of projects that we're willing to work on. If anybody has an idea of programs that are more capital-based, or in this case, the brownfield remediation-based, to remove blight, we're happy to entertain it and suggest it or recommend it as a staff to the R1 board.
Ms. Goro?
On the land bank, how many homes do you have, or
you want
properties on the land bank? Tell us a little bit about that, would you please?
Sure. The land bank side, we've done 25 acquisitions, one of them being the big Habitat one, but 25 houses have been acquired. There's 22 of them have been sold. So we've got 3 that we're using some rehab dollars we have from a state grant to, one we had to put a new roof on. We typically have to get them cleaned out. We're remediating lead in one of the houses on the land bank side, so we're getting those ready. Hopefully in the hopes of finding somebody who may be closer to being an owner-occupant as opposed to an investor. So the investors can do those windows very quickly and easily, but the owner-occupants, to get the lead out is much more difficult on an individual basis. So we have probably 20 or so more properties in the court process. A lot of those do not come into the land bank's ownership. An owner steps forward, a tax buyer may step forward. There's a number of reasons that we may not get a deed to the property, but we're continually working with the municipalities to find properties that are abandoned by the state, meaning 2 years tax delinquent, vacant, and an impairment to public health. So those are the 3 criteria we need to meet, and if we meet those criteria, typically we'll start a court case, and sometimes right away we'll find an owner that's long away or didn't know they own it. In some cases it was an heir to a family member that was served in that court case, and they said, oh, I didn't know, that's mine, I'll take care of it, or I'll pay the taxes and then sell the property on my own. So we still kind of consider those a win on the land bank side, but in terms of true acquisitions, we're at 25 right now.
Okay.
And if I can just add, to provide more context, the land bank as it stands today is a 5-county land bank. We're probably going to end up being a 6-county land bank somewhat soon. So we are the state line counties, Stevenson, Winnebago, Boone, McHenry, but then also Ogle County. And so we have capacity on the land bank side, both staff-wise and financially, to take on more land bank properties. Abandonment isn't really even the issue. The issue is there are not many properties that are land bank candidates that are over 2 years tax delinquent. And so any properties that your respective municipality or unincorporated area has, I think we would want to look at and give you a quick judgment on, because we do have the capacity to take more land bank properties right now, and we're doing that in McHenry and Boone, and to a lesser degree, Stevenson.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you, Michael.
Thank you again for
Eric.
partnering with us, and thank you for having us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye. All right, next, we are going to have our public participation. I'll read the statement here. Okay, comments shall be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers may not address zoning matters which are pending before the ZBA, zoning committee, or the county board. Personnel matters or pending or threatened litigation may not be addressed in open session. An individual may speak a maximum of 3 times per calendar year on the same topic. This prohibition shall include the repetition of the same topic and a statement on what is purported to be a different topic. Personal attacks or inappropriate language of any sort will not be tolerated. This evening's speaker is Reverend Earl Dotson, Sr.
Bible. Now unto him that is able to do exceeding abundantly and above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us. Unto him be glory throughout all ages, world without end. We humans like to think of the limitless progress in knowledge and technology and science, but it all leads to death of the scientist and the material world which he and she has explored. But God gives a view that throughout all ages, world without end. Here is described a realm of experience in which progress is limitless. It is limitless in kind, time, and depth. Space and time becomes irrelevant. Consequently, we look forward to being given instructions on how to become involved in semiconductor manufacturing through the CHIP Act and related training. This will bring to Westside Rockford advanced manufacturing and training at Church School with jobs paying upon completion of training $70,000 to $120,000 a year without a college degree. We had a Zoom meeting today sponsored by the Century Foundation of New York, which is financed by the Ford Foundation, laying out how groups such as ours can avail themselves of advanced manufacturing to get involved in this sophisticated, expensive, and necessary manufacturing. Mike Moriarty of the Chicago Teachers Union, who teaches such classes in junior colleges and at technical high school, will partner with us and the Illinois Manufacturers Association members who manufacture semiconductors. Spoke at the meeting today, as he has done in the past. This is very encouraging, for he and some people at the University of Illinois Chicago, especially Sister Cordova, are aware of the metrics published by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis that shows that 21 million blacks live at or below poverty, and that the black-white wealth gap is 25 cents for blacks for $1 for whites. Such an inequality of this magnitude and persistent is morally irresponsible and reprehensible, and constitutes no greater humanitarian crisis in America, bar none. It causes crime and other pathology. Yet, the silence locally and nationally is an absolute disgrace. And we are gathering petitions to let local and national politicians who depend upon the black vote, especially the Democratic Party, whose hold on the Congress is tenuous at best, that we will seek early retirement for some of them, because this is untenable and will not be tolerated.
Okay, thank you. Okay, before we move on, I do want to acknowledge our new Harlem Roscoe Fire Chief in the back there, Fire Chief Trollope. Thank you for being here. Okay, can I entertain a motion to approve the minutes of December 22nd, 2022, and lay over the January 12th, 2023 minutes? Moved by Ms. Crosby, second by Mr. Hoffman. Is there any discussion? Mr. Guevara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the December 22 minutes need to be amended to include the attendance of Mr. Webster and Mrs. Gorel.
Okay.
I so move.
Moved by Mr. Guevara to amend the minutes for the December 22nd meeting to include Mr. Webster. Was there somebody else?
And Mrs. Gorel.
And Mrs. Gorel. Do I have a second? Mr. Thompson seconds that motion. Is there any discussion on amending the minutes of December? Are there any board members opposed to that motion to amend? Very good. It's been amended. Very good. So we do have a motion and a second, I believe, for the December and layover January, now that December's been amended. Is there any board members opposed? Hearing none, please cast a yes for all members present. Thank you. Consent agenda. Can I entertain a motion to approve the raffle report and the auditor's report? Mr. Guevara motions to approve, second by Mr. McCarthy. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Very good. Hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to that motion to approve? Good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Move on to the appointments. Per county board rules, board chairman appointments require a 30-day layover unless there's a suspension of the rule. Tonight we're putting up for the Harlem Cemetery Association. There's no annual compensation. It's Ginger Eternal. She is a new appointment. It is to fulfill the remainder of the Patricia Rogers term expiring May of 2025. Okay, we'll move on to our standing committees, our Finance Committee. Utita.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have 5 items to move forward to you. Actually, 7, I'm sorry, 2 from old business that we can address now.
Sure.
First of all, we have 2 ordinances to read in for layover. The first one is an ordinance for the approval of a budget amendment for the Circuit Court bailiff. And the second ordinance to be read in is for the approval of a budget amendment for a court liaison position. Move on to the 3 resolutions then. We have a resolution authorizing amended agreement for improving criminal justice response to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking grant. And I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita. There's a second. Second by Mr. Thompson. Discussion, Mr. Butita?
This is a grant from the Department of Justice in the amount of $155,678.
Any board member discussion on this item? Hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
All right, we have a resolution authorizing the amended agreement for the Justice for Families grant, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita, second by Mr. Guevara. Discussion, Mr. Butita?
This is also a grant in the amount of $60,556 from the Department of Justice.
Board member discussion, questions? Good. Are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
All right, and then we also have a resolution authorizing service agreements for the abuse and later life grant, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita, seconded by Ms. Crosby. Board member discussion, Mr. Butita, any discussion on this item?
This also is a grant in the amount of $88,601.
Very good. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to this motion to approve this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
All right, from unfinished business, we have an ordinance for a budget amendment for the state's attorney state forfeiture funds. I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita, second by Mr. McCarthy. Mr. Butita.
All right, this is a $100,000 request from the state's attorney. That fund has a balance of $159,000, so we have the existing funds for that.
Very good. Board member discussion? Hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to approving this ordinance? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
Lastly, we have a budget amendment for year-end adjustments for 2022, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Butita, seconded by Mrs. Crosby. Mr. Butita.
I'll refer to Mr. Rickard for details on this one.
Mr. Rickard.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, what we're doing here is we're closing the books on the activity for the prior years. This is not something we've done in past years at Winnebago, but it is a good accounting practice. And going forward, this is what we're going to do. It's a great tool to identify overages and reductions in various budgets, and we use that for taking further action. For example, one of the things we noticed, there was a significant overage in the circuit clerk's office. We brought the circuit clerk into the finance committee. We had a discussion over some of the issues facing that office, and it will enable us to work with him going forward on his budget to make sure we can prevent that in the future. Something else that we're using it for is it's a modeling tool for future year budgets. So if we discover, for example, we're over or short significantly in a line item, that will draw attention to it, and we can look at it in future budget years to determine if there's a need for an adjustment, or we have to sit down with the department head or elected official and identify what the issues are. And it's also a good tool for the finance committee that they can use to evaluate the budget process.
Thank you, Mr. Rickert. Any further discussion on this ordinance? Okay. Are there any board members opposed to approving this ordinance? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Butita.
That'll conclude the report.
Thank you, Mr. Butita. All right, moving on to our zoning committee, Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Chairman. We have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Economic Development Committee, Mr. Sweeney.
We have no report tonight, but we will have a Economic Development Committee meeting January 30th at 5:30 on the third floor of the administration building.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Operations and Administrative Committees. No report this evening, I don't believe. Public Works Committee, Mr. Tassoni. There you are.
Hiding on the sidelines, Chairman.
There you go.
The Public Works Committee brings forth two resolutions this evening. The first item is Resolution 23-001. It's a resolution declaring surplus Highway Department vehicles and equipment and authorizing the sale thereof, and I would so move.
Moved by Mr. Tassoni, second by Mr. Guevara. This is discussion, Mr. Tassoni?
Just this is a typical resolution when we need to declare items that would go to auction. It's just some worn out, a skid loader, backhoe, pickup truck, and a mower that Ms. Johns will see to it that's put on public auction.
Very good. Board member discussion on this item? Are there any board members opposed to approving this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Tassoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next item is Resolution 23-002, and it's a resolution authorizing the execution of a local public agency agreement with IDOT for SPR grant. I would move and speak to it as well.
Moved by Mr. Tassoni, seconded by Mr. Webster. Mr. Tassoni.
Like I said, this is a grant, and it's coming to Winnebago County to support Rockford Township, South Beloit, and the Village of Winnebago, and it's basically so that we can put all of our signage throughout the county on like a GIS program and have our asset inventory.
Very good. Board member discussion? All right, hearing none, are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present.
That's it, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tassoni. Public Safety and Judiciary Committee, Mr. Lindmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have three resolutions tonight. The first one is a resolution awarding off-site administration medical claim services, and this is through Heritage Health Services. So move, sorry.
So moved by Mr. Lindmark, second by Mr. Webster. Discussion? All right, hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Lindmark.
Our second resolution is the resolution awarding detection and mitigation of COVID-19 technology, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Lindmark, second by Mr. Webster. Discussion?
I have none.
No discussion from the chair. Board member discussion? All right, hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to the motion to approve this resolution? Very good. Please cast a yes for all members present. Mr. Lindmark.
The last resolution is authorizing a service agreement for police services with 815 Entertainment LLC, Hard Rock Casino of Rockford, and I so move.
Moved by Mr. Lindmark, second by Mr. McCarthy. Is there any discussion? Mr. Scroll.
Chairman, I'd like to offer an amendment to this resolution. Under Sections 2C and Sections 8C, I would like the amendment to read under 2C, Hard Rock reserves the right to request additional personnel. Additional personnel shall require an additional fee in accordance with Section 6 of this agreement. And under Section 8C, notwithstanding the foregoing, Hard Rock shall have the right to request additional services such as traffic control, special events, and incident investigation. Any request for additional services shall require an additional fee in accordance with Section 6 of this agreement. Hard Rock shall not control the method of performance of such services, but may request the time and place of performance and the number of officers to be involved, except where the same may conflict with minimum staffing rules or policies of the sheriff.
Okay, now that Mr. Scroll has read the amendments, we have a second. Second by Ms. Fellers. Discussion. Mr. Butita.
Thank you. So the location of the current casino, is that in the city of Rockford? And would the Rockford Police be responding to some of this, what you're referring to, for extra assistance?
Not according to this, no. If I can speak to the purpose of this?
Please.
The existing language gave the casino the ability to request additional personnel above what this agreement is. The problem I had was the language read, they may require additional fees, and I believe if they're getting additional services over and above, that they should be required to pay for those. So I simply changed the may to a shall.
Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that's the full extent of the amendment? It changes the word may to shall?
Correct.
And has anyone, the casino, were they aware of this change coming through?
I'm not sure. I reached out to legal, and shortly prior to this meeting, I spoke to a representative from the Sheriff's Department to discuss this, and I haven't gotten any pushback in any way, shape, or form on it.
So the Sheriff's Department is fine with this change?
I will let them speak to that.
Okay.
Mr. Saganek? Chief Saganek?
Yeah, the Sheriff's Department would have no objections to the change.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Sounds reasonable to me. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Okay, are there any board members opposed? Oh, Mr. Linmark.
I just want to remind everyone, this is a $289,802 revenue for the county for putting one officer who is not on duty. He's on duty when he's there, but they're not pulling someone off the streets for 12 hours, 365 days a year. I think it's really good for the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any board members opposed to the amendment? Oh. Yes, Mr. Arena.
So I just to understand what this is, so our deputy is being paid directly by Hard Rock, or they're being paid by us?
Chief Saganek?
This is a typical contract arrangement like we have with
the schools and
Chesney
stuff?
Park, the school system, the Forest Preserve District. We pay the deputy, and then we recoup the cost from the business. So we invoice them.
But it's revenue, it's neutral, right? We're not, or is there extra funds in there for us for doing this, or is it just, they're just paying the cost of the deputy and that's all?
They're paying the cost of deputy, you're correct.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure I understood that part of it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Please, Mr. Neighbors.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Scroll's adjustment, when he read the resolution, when it came to the part where it says there's a contract for so many hours, but sometimes they may have concerts where they require more hours than what the contract allotted. And Mr. Scroll noticed that the resolution said that they may pay for the extra hours, and that was something that was discussed. That's up to the sheriff. And Mr. Scroll wanted them to say they shall pay the extra hours.
That's correct. Mr. Arena?
One more comment. I just suggest in the future, it's easier for everyone to comprehend amendments when we have the written copy, so if you just have staff, distribute it. But it seems reasonable and beneficial to us to have it, so I'm supportive.
Thank you. Mr. Tassoni?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if, Mr. Saganek, if you could confirm this or not, but I believe, I'm not against this at all, but in these instances where we sub out these officers, I don't believe we receive a 100% compensation in return, and we're still liable when it comes to workman's comp. Is that correct?
That's not correct. We charge, That's not correct. We charge our actual costs. So there's no profit, but there's no burden by the taxpayers, for the county.
And then, in addition, we still carry the comp on them, right? If they were injured, we're still liable.
If they're injured, correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tassoni. Any further questions? Discussion on this amendment? Very good. Are there any board members opposed to the amendment that was been brought forward this evening? All right, hearing none, please cast a yes for all members present. Now the resolution has been amended. Mr. Lindmark.
Yeah, one more thing, December for the.
Nope, we need to vote on.
Oh,
Do you want to make a motion to
Motion.
approve the
Sorry.
amended resolution?
Motion to approve the amended resolution.
Very good. Second by Mr. Neighbors. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Are there any board members opposed to this amended resolution? Very good. Please cast yes for all members present. Thank you.
December's revenue we received for federal housing inmates is $313,000, and 2022 ended up right around $4.4 million. So that's been a very good program for us, in my opinion.
Very good.
So thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lindmark. All right, we've already concluded unfinished business, so we'll move on to new business. Is there any new business in front of the board this evening? Hearing none. Announcements and communications. Clerk Gummow.
Thank you, Chairman. The items listed below were received as correspondence.
Very good. Any board member communications? Hearing none. Mr. Webster? Motion to adjourn by Mr. Webster, second by Mr. Thompson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Have a good night.
Sweet.